The diplomatic assignment. The rain hammered against the windows of the small New Moscow apartment. Elena Petrova sat in her weather armchair, a cup of cold tea forgotten on the side table. 58 years had carved lines into her face, but her steel blue eyes remained sharp, watching the city lights blur through the downpour. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Elena's hand instinctively moved toward the hidden compartment, where she kept her weapons, then stopped. Old habits die hard. "Come in," she called. General Viktor Sokolov entered, water dripping from his uniform. "Colonel Petrova," he said, using her old rank despite her 20-year retirement. "It's just Elena now, Victor," she replied, not moving from her chair. "Not anymore." He placed a sealed folder on her table. "Earth needs the winter fox." Elena's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly on the armchair. The winter fox, a name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in decades. The ghost operative who had single-handedly prevented 3 interplanetary wars, dismantled dozens of hostile organizations, and completed missions deemed impossible by every military strategist. "I'm retired," she said flatly. "This isn't a military mission." Victor sat across from her. "We've made contact with the Galactic Senate. 23 advanced civilizations, most of them centuries ahead of us technologically." Elena raised an eyebrow. "And you need a retired soldier for diplomatic work." Some of these species view humans as primitive, disposable. The Zarkonians especially. They're pushing for restrictions on human expansion, trade sanctions, even military observation posts in our solar system. "So you want someone who looks harmless but can bite back." Victor smiled grimly. "We need someone who understands both diplomacy and war. Someone who can prevent conflict while being prepared for it." Elena opened the folder. Images of alien species filled the pages, some humanoid, others bizarre beyond imagination. The Zarkonians were reptilian, standing 8 feet tall with scaled armor-like skin, and 4 eyes that gleamed with intelligence and malice. "You leave in 3 days," Victor said. "The Senate is convening a special session to address humanity's status in the galactic community." After Victor left, Elena stood by the window, watching the rain. She had spent 5 years building this quiet life, trying to forget the blood on her hands. Now they wanted her to step back into the shadows, to become the winter fox once more. She picked up an old photograph from her desk, her grandmother, standing proud in her Soviet uniform during World War II. "Sometimes, little fox," her grandmother had told her, "we must appear weak to discover who our true enemies are." 3 days later, Elena boarded the diplomatic shuttle. She wore a simple gray suit, her white hair pulled back in a neat bun. To anyone watching, she looked like a harmless bureaucrat, perhaps someone's grandmother. No one would guess that beneath her modest appearance was a warrior who had once infiltrated the most secure facilities in the galaxy and emerged without leaving a trace. The journey to the Senate took 2 weeks. Elena spent the time studying alien cultures, political dynamics, and potential threats. Her assistant, a young man named David Chen, marveled at her ability to absorb information. "How do you remember all these details?" he asked one evening. Elena smiled. "When you've spent your life analyzing threats, patterns become clear. The Zarkonians value strength above all. The Ethereals prize knowledge. The Yavari respect cunning. Understanding what drives each species is key to diplomacy." The Galactic Senate Station was a marvel of alien engineering, a massive structure floating in the void between star systems. Its crystalline spires reflected starlight in mesmerizing patterns, while docking bays accommodated ships from across the galaxy. As their shuttle approached, Elena noticed the positioning of military vessels. The Zarkonian warships formed a subtle blockade around the human docking sector, just close enough to intimidate without violating protocol. "Interesting," she murmured. "What is?" David asked. "The Zarkonians are already sending a message. They want us to feel surrounded, inferior." They were met at the docking bay by Ambassador Kthax, a Zarkonian whose scales shifted from black to deep purple. his 4 eyes fixed on Elena with undisguised contempt. "The human representative," he said, his voice like grinding stones. "I expected someone more impressive." Elena bowed slightly. "Ambassador Petrova, I look forward to working with you." Kvax's eyes narrowed. He had expected defiance, not polite deference. "The Senate convenes tomorrow. Do try not to embarrass your species." As Kvax departed, David whispered, "That was insulting." "Yes, it was," Elena agreed calmly. "And very informative." Their quarters were small, positioned in the least prestigious section of the station. Another deliberate slight. Elena didn't complain. Instead, she methodically checked the rooms for surveillance devices, finding 12 hidden cameras and 3 audio bugs. "Should we remove them?" David asked. "No, let them watch. We'll give them exactly what they expect to see. A weak, aging diplomat struggling to understand galactic politics." That evening, Elena attended a reception for new delegates. She moved through the crowd with careful uncertainty, asking naive questions and appearing overwhelmed by the alien technologies on display. The other species regarded her with mixtures of pity and disdain. Only one being seemed to see through her act. Ambassador Villain of the Nexeri, an energy being whose form shifted like aurora lights. As Elena passed, Violent's colors pulsed in what might have been amusement. "You play the fool well, human," Violin whispered in a voice like wind chimes. Elena smiled vaguely. "I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean." Villain's form flickered. "Of course not. How silly of me." Later, in her quarters, Elena reviewed the intelligence she had gathered. The Zarkonians were building a coalition against humanity. They had convinced several species that humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable. The vote tomorrow would determine whether humanity faced severe restrictions or maintained its sovereignty. As she prepared for bed, Elena noticed movement in the ventilation shaft. A tiny drone, Zarkonian design, equipped with a neural disruptor. An assassination attempt disguised as a malfunction. Elena didn't react visibly. Instead, she continued her routine, waiting until the drone positioned itself for attack. Then, with movements too fast for the surveillance cameras to properly capture, she snatched the drone from the air and disabled it with precise pressure to its control node. She placed the dead drone on her desk and went to sleep, knowing the Zarkonians would be analyzing the footage, trying to understand how their foolproof assassination attempt had failed. The Winter Fox had sent her first message: "I am not what I appear to be." Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The deception begins. The Senate chamber was a cathedral of alien architecture. Crystalline walls rose hundreds of meters high, refracting light into rainbow cascades. 23 platforms floated in a perfect circle, each adjusted for its species' environmental needs. The human platform, notably, was the smallest and positioned lowest in the chamber. Another calculated insult. Elena took her seat without comment, her posture deliberately uncertain. Around her, alien delegates conversed in dozens of languages, their words automatically translated by the chamber systems. She noticed Kvax watching her from the Zarkonian platform, his 4 eyes gleaming with anticipation. The session began with a ceremonial chime that resonated through multiple dimensions. Speaker Zoran, a tentacled being from the Hadarian collective, called for order. "We gather to address the matter of humanity's status within the Galactic Senate," Zoran announced. "Ambassador Kvax of the Zarkonian Empire has raised concerns." Kvax rose, his scales shifting to deep crimson. "Honored colleagues, humanity represents a clear threat to galactic stability. In their brief spacefaring history, they have demonstrated unprecedented aggression. They develop weapons at an alarming rate. They expand without regard for established territories. They must be contained." Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. Several species nodded, having been swayed by Zarkonian propaganda. "Ambassador Petrova," Zoran said, "how do you respond?" Elena stood slowly, appearing to gather her thoughts. "Honored speaker, distinguished delegates, She began, her voice quavering slightly. Humanity seeks only peaceful coexistence. Yes, we have had conflicts, but always in self-defense. We are young as a spacefaring species, still learning. Kfax's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. See how they deflect responsibility. This is typical human deception. Elena continued as if she hadn't heard. We offer our resources, our creativity, our desire for friendship. Surely these have value. The Zarkonian pressed his advantage. Pretty words from a species that developed nuclear weapons before achieving faster-than-light travel, that weaponized their first contact with extraterrestrial microorganisms, that turned their own moon into a military base. These were regrettable necessities, Elena said, allowing uncertainty to color her voice. We faced threats we didn't understand. As the delegates dispersed, Ambassador Villain approached Elena. An interesting performance, the Nexari said quietly. I'm not sure what you mean, Elena replied, maintaining her facade. The Zarkonians are planning something, Villain warned. Something beyond mere political maneuvering. That night, Elena activated a secure quantum communicator hidden in her personal effects. Authorization. Winter Fox. Priority Alpha. Suspected Zarkonian military action imminent. Request deep scan of border sectors. The response came within minutes. Confirmed. Zarkonian fleet movements detected near Proxima Colony. Estimated arrival. 72 hours. Elena sat back, pieces falling into place. The political theater was a distraction. While Kithax kept the Senate focused on debates, the Zarkonian military prepared to seize human colonies, presenting the galaxy with a fait accompli. She needed proof. Moving through the station's maintenance tunnels, paths she had memorized from studying the blueprints, Elena made her way to the Zarkonian diplomatic wing. Her age was an advantage here. Security systems were calibrated to detect strength and speed, not the careful, patient movements of someone who appeared elderly. She reached Kithax's private office and bypassed the security with tools disguised as medical devices. Inside, she found what she needed. Detailed invasion plans, communication logs with Zarkonian High Command, evidence of bribes paid to several Senate species. As she downloaded the data, she heard footsteps. 3 Zarkonian guards entered, weapons drawn. Humans are not permitted here, one growled. Elena turned slowly, letting them see her aged face, her trembling hands. Oh dear, I seem to be lost. These corridors all look the same. The guards relaxed slightly. Just a confused old human. That moment of underestimation was all Elena needed. Moving with sudden lethal precision, she struck pressure points that her extensive xenobiology studies had identified. The first guard collapsed, his nervous system temporarily short-circuited. The second managed to raise his weapon before Elena's palm strike crushed his breathing apparatus. The third tried to call for help, but Elena had already disabled his communicator with an electromagnetic pulse from her hearing aid. She left them unconscious but alive, arranged to look like they had fought among themselves, a common occurrence among aggressive Zarkonians. The next day, Elena began building alliances. She approached the smaller species first, those the Zarkonians had ignored or bullied. She shared carefully selected pieces of intelligence, never enough to reveal her source, but sufficient to plant seeds of doubt about Zarkonian intentions. To the Yavari, masters of trade, she revealed evidence of Zarkonian plans to monopolize certain trade routes. To the Mindari, dedicated to preserving knowledge, she exposed Zarkonian attempts to suppress technological exchanges with humanity. Each revelation was delivered with perfect innocence, as if Elena had stumbled upon the information by accident. I probably misunderstood, she would say. I'm still learning to read these complex documents. By the week's end, cracks had appeared in the Zarkonian coalition. Fax grew increasingly frustrated as his support eroded. In desperation, he decided to eliminate Elena directly. Consequences be damned. Elena was ready. The attack came during a station-wide maintenance cycle when internal sensors were offline. 6 Zarkonian Special Forces operatives breached her quarters, equipped with advanced combat armor and weapons. They expected to find a sleeping diplomat. Instead, they found the Winter Fox. Elena had prepared the battlefield. Furniture arranged to create choke points. Environmental controls set to rapidly cycle between extreme temperatures, exploiting a weakness in Zarkonian physiology. Improvised weapons hidden throughout the room. The fight lasted less than 3 minutes. When station security arrived, responding to an anonymous tip, they found 6 of the Zarkonian Empire's elite warriors unconscious, their armor systems overloaded, their weapons dismantled. Elena sat calmly at her desk, appearing to work on diplomatic papers. "Oh my," she said, looking up with perfectly feigned surprise. "I was so engrossed in my work. I didn't hear them come in. They seem to have had some sort of accident." The security chief, a 4-armed Vakari, studied the scene with growing bewilderment. The evidence suggested the Zarkonians had somehow defeated themselves, but that was impossible. "Ambassador Petrova," he said slowly, "do you require medical attention?" "No, thank you. Though I would appreciate it if someone could clean up this mess. I have important documents to prepare for tomorrow's session." Word of the incident spread quickly. Delegates whispered about the mysterious failure of Zarkonian special forces. Some suggested equipment malfunction. Others wondered if humans had hidden protectors. None suspected the truth, that the harmless-looking grandmother had single-handedly defeated 6 of the galaxy's most feared warriors. In his quarters, Kithax raged. Every plan was failing. The human seemed protected by inexplicable luck. Worse, his own allies were beginning to distance themselves, sensing his growing desperation. He decided to accelerate the invasion timeline. If he couldn't win in the Senate, he would create facts on the ground. Human colonies would burn, and the galaxy would see their weakness. He didn't know that Elena had anticipated this move, that even now, human fleets were repositioning based on intelligence she had provided. The Winter Fox had spent decades mastering the art of war. Now she was demonstrating mastery of a different kind, the warfare of perception, politics, and patience. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation. The predator would learn that sometimes the most dangerous prey is the one that appears helpless. The Winter Fox revealed. The emergency session of the Galactic Senate convened as news spread across the galaxy. Human colonies were under attack. Zarkonian warships had launched simultaneous assaults on 3 frontier worlds, while Kithax stood in the Senate chamber demanding humanity's immediate surrender. "See how they fall," Kithax proclaimed, his scales blazing crimson. 3 colonies burning, their defenses crumbling. This is the true face of human weakness. They must accept Zarkonian protection or face extinction. Elena stood calmly on the human platform, reviewing a datapad. The delegates watched her, expecting panic, pleas for mercy, desperate negotiations. Instead, she appeared to be checking routine correspondence. "Ambassador Petrova," Speaker Zoran called. "Your colonies are under attack. Have you no response?" Elena looked up slowly. "I apologize, Speaker. I was reviewing the latest tactical updates. It seems there's been a misunderstanding." Kithax's mandibles clicked in contempt. "Misunderstanding? Your worlds burn." "Do they?" Elena touched her datapad. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing real-time feeds from the 3 colony worlds. The Senate fell silent. Instead of burning colonies, the displays showed Zarkonian warships floating dead in space, their systems dark, their weapons disabled. On each world, human defense forces were efficiently securing surrender agreements from stranded Zarkonian ground troops. "How?" Kithax sputtered. "This is impossible." Elena's voice remained calm, almost gentle. 3 days ago, I transmitted detailed intelligence about your invasion plans to Earth Command. Our fleets were waiting. Your ships encountered an interesting phenomenon, a quantum disruption field that our scientists developed by studying ethereal energy manipulation techniques. She nodded toward the ethereal delegate, who pulsed with surprised approval. But your technology, Kithax began, is often underestimated. Elena finished. As are we. The implications rippled through the chamber. The humans had not only anticipated the attack, but had prepared a perfect counter using technology adapted from other species. This showed both tactical brilliance and diplomatic capability. There's more, Elena continued. My investigation revealed that Ambassador Kithax has been conducting unauthorized military operations for months, bribing officials, suppressing trade, planning invasions. I have evidence. The chamber's displays shifted to show documents, recordings, transaction logs. The proof was irrefutable. Kithax roared in fury. Lies. Human deception. He lunged toward Elena's platform, his ceremonial blade drawn. What happened next would be debated by xenobiologists for decades. Elena moved with fluid grace that belied her apparent age. She sidestepped Kithax's charge, using his momentum against him. Her hand found the precise point where his scales met, applying pressure to a nerve cluster that xenobiologists hadn't known existed. Kithax collapsed, paralyzed but conscious. Elena stood over him, and for the first time, allowed her true nature to show. The facade of the uncertain diplomat vanished, replaced by the warrior she had always been. 27 years ago, she said, her voice carrying through the silent chamber, I infiltrated a Krell maximum security prison to rescue captured scientists. 18 years ago, I negotiated the Proxima Accords while holding off the Kari raiders with nothing but improvised weapons. 9 years ago, I ended the Terran Civil War by eliminating both extremist leaders and forcing compromise. She looked around the chamber. I am Colonel Elena Petrova, formerly of Earth Special Operations Command. Some knew me as the Winter Fox. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even species without direct contact with humanity had heard whispers of the Winter Fox, the ghost operative who appeared wherever conflict threatened, who could topple governments or forge peace with equal skill. Earth sent you, Speaker Zoran asked. Earth sent a diplomat, Elena replied. One capable of diplomacy through strength. We do not seek war, but we will not be victims. We offer friendship, but we demand respect. She turned to the Zarkonian delegation. Your invasion has failed. Your plans are exposed. You can choose. Continue this conflict and face a united humanity that is far more capable than you imagined, or accept peace with honor. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several species immediately moved to support humanity, impressed by the combination of strength and restraint. Others, who had secretly resented Zarkonian bullying, saw an opportunity to realign. Kithax, still paralyzed, could only watch as his empire's influence crumbled. Over the next hours, Elena negotiated with supernatural skill. She offered the Zarkonians a face-saving exit, withdraw their forces, pay reparations framed as trade agreements, and maintain their Senate seat with reduced influence. To the other species, she proposed technological exchanges, mutual defense pacts, and cultural programs. She emphasized humanity's desire to learn, to grow, to contribute to galactic civilization. By the session's end, humanity had not only secured its position, but emerged as a respected power. The vote on restrictions failed overwhelmingly. Ambassador Violin approached Elena afterward. You played a masterful game, Winter Fox, but why reveal yourself now? Elena smiled. Because sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to show your true face. The galaxy needed to see that humans can be both warriors and diplomats, both strong and wise. 3 months later, Elena stood in the observation deck of the Senate station, preparing to return to Earth. The political landscape had transformed. Humanity was now a full member of the galactic community, with growing alliances and expanding influence. Kithax approached, his posture subdued. I underestimated your species, he said. Many do, Elena replied. We're young, impulsive, sometimes foolish. But we learn quickly, and we never give up. The Winter Fox, Kithax mused. Why that name? Elena gazed at the stars. In Russian folklore, the fox is clever, adaptable, sometimes a trickster. But in winter, when survival is hardest, the fox becomes something more, a creature that thrives where others fail. And now you return to retirement. Perhaps, or perhaps the winter fox will find new challenges. The galaxy is vast, and peace requires constant vigilance. As her ship departed, Elena reflected on the words her grandmother had shared long ago. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. Humanity had appeared weak, drawing out its enemies, learning their plans. Now, having shown strength, they could build genuine partnerships based on mutual respect. The Winter Fox had one more lesson for the galaxy. True power lies not in weapons or fleets, but in the wisdom to know when to fight and when to extend a hand in friendship. In the Senate chamber, a new plaque was installed commemorating humanity's full membership. Few noticed the small symbol etched in its corner, a fox's paw print in snow. The end.